This Bergara 7 PRC Premier Full Custom build is a rifle build you're going to want to check out, and that's what we're going to do in this video. Gavin here from UltimateReloader.com. 7 PRC is here, and Ultimate Reloader is going big, including a high-level overview of 7 PRC, a comparison of all 3 different PRC cartridges, reloading for the PRC, my full custom bat build, my full custom Bergara build, a rifle builder's guide for 7mm PRC, and more. So that's a lot of content covering 7 PRC. In this video specifically, we're going to be focused on this totally killer full custom Bergara build, including recapping quick facts. If you don't know what 7 PRC is, we'll cover that at a high level. We're going to talk about all the parts and pieces, the bill of materials. We're going to talk about the tools that I used for this build. The Bergara Premier Action. If you're not familiar with it, you can check out some of my stories like our review of the MG Lite. But you can get the Premier Action from a vendor like Brownells, so I thought I would cover the high-level overview of what you can do with it and some of the features. The Boyd's Agility stock. I did a recent story with the 224 Valkyrie stock upgrade. Similar deal here, but it was for this from-scratch build. I'm going to cover the chambering process. I've got a new pressure flush system. This thing is working awesome. It's making my life a lot easier. If you're wondering about Bergara, it's not difficult. It's just basically a lot like a Remington 700. I'm going to talk briefly about the bedding and inletting and custom pillars that I made for this stock, just like I did for the 224 Valkyrie update, and get into some initial results. Okay, so 7 PRC. This is squarely in the middle of the PRC lineup. We got 6.5 PRC, 7 PRC, and 300 PRC. 6.5 PRC is a short action. The 7 PRC and the 300 PRC are both on the long action end of things. Announced October 26 at NASGW, it uses a 7mm projectile, 2.280 inch case length, 3.340 inch cartridge overall length. This is the same as 300 Win Mag. If you have a long action rifle, it's likely just to be a barrel swap to upgrade to 7 PRC, which is really cool. Standard Magnum case rim, bolt face, reloading shell holders, shell plates, 30-degree shoulder angle, uses a large rifle Magnum primer. Here's what's really cool about the 7 PRC. They have standardized on a 1 in 8 twist, which is what I used for this build. It's got a velocity of about 3,000 feet per second for 175 grain projectile, longer barrel life than some of its competitors, and it's non-belted. So this cartridge has become one of my favorites in the Magnum domain. Okay, and for this build, we've got the Bergara Premier Action. This was just like what you could get off the shelf from Brownells. The Boyd's Agility stock in long action. A Bartline barrel blank for 22-inch finished length, 5R rifling, nice contour. Hawkins Hunter DBM bottom metal. Hawkins Hunter magazine, 3-round capacity. Really, really cool. You can see how that fits just about flush here on the bottom. Just enough to grab, preload your ammo, pop it in, and you're ready to roll. I really like these Hunter magazines. Salmon River Solutions Tie Pro 3 ST muzzle brake. This is titanium. It was a part of the Cerakote job. Really turned out nice. Riton Conquer X7 3-24x50 scope, and a Bergara 20 MOA scope rail. That you would need to get separately. Also, Hawkins Precision Scope Rings. Okay, so the tools. A lot of tools involved in this kind of build. Of course, I've got the Precision Matthews TL1660 lathe. This thing is awesome. It's big, it's massive, it's rigid, gives you a great surface finish. I used the Precision Matthews PM949 TV mill. This is a 9x49 table, really great capacity and capabilities for all the stock work, large work envelope. Totally love that machine. Variable speed head. Crank it to change the RPMs on the fly. SSG range rod. So I was lucky this time. So I got 2 reamers as with the Hornady Rifle Builders Kit, the preview that they gave out to rifle builders. And I had a rougher and a finisher, and the bushings that came with them fit the bore of the Bartline barrels perfectly. And I was able to take both of those off, put them onto the SSG range rod, and that worked great for dialing in the barrels. I'm using the Straight Shot Gunsmithing True Bore alignment system. This is my standard setup now. You can do axial and radial adjustments to dial in that specific section of the bore that you care about. In my case, I'm very, very obsessive about the throat area. Getting that to run perfectly true so that when the throat is cut, it's perfect. Okay, I had the JGS 7 PRC rougher and finisher. I only ended up using the finisher from that. For these two 7 PRC builds, I also built a custom reamer holder. You're going to want to check out my complete chambering video I did over at Bat Machine with Bruce Tom. Inspired by his setup, I cut a Morse taper number 4 blank in place with tooling on the headstock so that I could have perfect headstock to reamer holder alignment. 7/16 shank in this case. Cross drilled for the set screw. That worked out really, really well. So it's a rigid reamer holder, perfect alignment. Really, really like the sound of the cut, the feel of the cut, and the quality of the cut on that. This is also, for these two builds, my debut of my DIY science project, this pressure flush system that's completely modular, stands aside from the lathe on the headstock side. And these are the first two chambering jobs I've done. Again, inspired by my trip to Bat Machine with that homebrew prototype pressure flush system. I'll have more information on that a little bit later. This was also my opportunity to use my complete Cerakote booth and shop. I've got my Light Armor LA 2500 oven for Cerakote. With the UR100 discount code, you can save $100. This is the best deal going for a Cerakote oven, bar none. Thing works great. Also using the Short Action Customs modular barrel vise and modular action wrench. For the Bergara, you're going to use a number 1 head on the action wrench. That would be the same as for Remington 700, and that works great. So that's a high-level overview of the tools. Let's talk about Bergara's premier action. So as I mentioned, this is the same action that I've got on the MG Light. That one is a short action chambered in 6.5 Creedmoor. It's it's the same action that you'll find in those rifles, but you can buy them separately. I happen to see them on brownells.com. These actions have a Remington 700 footprint in terms of the inletting that you'll need in your stock. I ordered this Remington 700, fit good. Remington 700 triggers work with this action, which is huge news because, you know, Trigger Tech or Bixen Andy or Timney, whatever it is that you like that's set up for Remington 700 will work with this action. Also, the scope rails are compatible between Remington 700 and the Bergara Premier 8x40 screws. It's a 2-lug bolt system with a floating bolt head that's swappable and a cone-shaped bolt nose, and the recess on the barrel tenon helps with feeding. And so really, really good stuff. Boyd's Agility stock, again, you're going to want to check out the story that I did with the 224 Valkyrie stock upgrade to go into a little bit more depth there. Here's a picture of that stock. Adjustable length of pull, which is button operated. You've got the cheek riser. I opted for that option. It's got a hybrid grip that's good for offhand and prone shooting. Semi-beaver tail forend, swivel stud for the bipod or sling, depending on what you're doing. I've upgraded here to a combo rail from Salmon River Solutions. This has got a short Arca section, perfect for a bipod, and I've got a Picatinny section if I want to run a Picatinny bipod or other front end accessory. So those two parts, the combo rail and the Typro 3 ST brake, really, really good stuff from Salmon River Solutions. So this is long action, obviously, for this rifle. The 224 Valkyrie was short action, wanted to provide a variety of different insights here, and so far really liking things. Okay, so going into the barrel work, I do an initial dial end. I do the muzzle end first because with this lathe, I like to attach a barrel extension that will give me something to hold on outside on the spider end, and then also provide an interface for the pressure flush, which I made a 5/8 by 24 adapter for. So it's as if I have the end of the muzzle sticking out the end of the lathe. It's actually a barrel extension. I screw on the swivel from the pressure flush system, pumps through the extension in the barrel and through the reamer. Pretty cool stuff. So that's why I'm doing the muzzle end first. Dial in, part off the end, turn down the tenon, cut the thread relief groove, cut a step down on the end. This is where the non-threaded little portion for your breaker, your suppressor, whatever you're attaching, thread protector, to center up before the threads start to engage. Face to length, thread, and then cut the recess in the crown. And of course here I'm running 5/8 by 24 threading, which I use when I can. And for 7 PRC, that's a great threading specification. Okay, then the barrel blank comes out of the lathe, it gets flipped around, barrel extension gets tightened down, and then we start working on the breech end. So I start with a pre-dial of the barrel, and I get both ends running within about 1/1000th of an inch. And this is just to get things roughly dialed in so that I can do a pre-drill. We remove the bulk of what would be the chamber material and leave about 200,000th in length and about 30,000th in diameter based on the smallest dimensions left for the reamer to take care of. Okay, then I can get the nose of my 10,000th indicator in and indicate the portion of the bore I care most about, which is that throat area, what will become the throat area, and about an inch ahead of that, perfectly true, in 2 points, so that I can account for any curvature of the bore and make sure that the bullet will have perfect alignment when it starts to get engraved by the rifling. Once that area is dialed true within about 1/10,000th of an inch, we can bore that pre-drill area perfectly true so that when the reamer hits it, it's not going to have any run out. These are really where the full custom rifle builds have a big advantage, is getting everything concentric and having a perfect throat transition, having no run out in the chamber area. This is just going to help the rifle shoot better, and it's that extra level of perfection that you're going to get when you go to this length. After we bore that pre-drill true, it's time to turn down the tenon and cut the thread relief. For this particular job, we've got a 1 1/16 by 16 threads per inch thread pitch, and this gave me an opportunity to use another one of my new tools, which is a thread micrometer that I picked up. I picked up a 0 to 1 and a 1 to 2, again, based on my trip to Bat Machine. Finally, on the lathe, I also installed a Mitutoyo scale as a quill DRO so that I can monitor my depth when drilling, or more importantly, when cutting a chamber. So after the tenon is turned down and after the thread relief is cut, we can actually cut the threads. Then we cut the breech area. There's sort of a breech cone. It's not a perfect breech cone. There's also a small flat section right around where the entrance to the chamber is. So it's a little bit different than breech profiles that I've cut before, but nothing too difficult. And I got dimensions directly from Bergara. I've seen some specifications floating around online. I don't have permission to reprint those, so for the time being, I can't share that. But it's nothing too difficult, and if you have a takeoff barrel, it's pretty easy to figure out kind of what needs to be done for that portion of the job. Then it's time to cut the chamber, and I'm using my rigid reamer holder, my tailstock DRO, and my pressure flush system. This took a little bit of a learning curve to figure out what viscosity of cutting oil I needed and how much pressure to run, how much volume to allow. In other words, I can restrict flow, I can regulate primary pressure, kind of a lot going on there. And for this job, I actually diluted the cutting oil a little bit to make it a little bit less viscous, a little bit more thin, and increase the pressure a little bit. And I found that I got really good chip flow through the reamer. And I used another trick that I learned from Bruce, and you're going to want to check out that video for more detail, but I cut little grooves in the head of the screw where the reamer flutes are at the very front ahead of the bushing, so that the cutting oil can go down through the screw under the bushing through the flutes and remove all of the chips and cool down the chamber while it's being cut. And that worked really good. So what was great about this new setup with the tailstock DRO and using the saddle and one of the screws where the tailstock would hit it as a 0 point is I could very precisely monitor my reaming depth. And I did a few checks to check for run out and to see where I was at using the go gauge and using the action and the go gauge together where necessary, and got things down to just the right depth where I needed to stop. This saved me a lot of time compared to my old method of using compressed air to blow the chips out of the reamer, putting it back in, and kind of repeating that process every as much as 20 thousandths of an inch, you know. So, I mean, you start at 200, you go down to 20, and then down to, you know, final parameters. But that takes a lot of time, especially with a long magnum chamber like the 7 PRC. So I'm enjoying the job quite a bit better, and all the tooling came together. It just took a little bit of fiddling to figure out kind of what I needed to do to get everything to the finish line. So after the reaming is done, then we polish the chamber with some 240 grit sandpaper just lightly, and then make some transitions into the entrance of the chamber and that kind of thing. Make sure everything looks good. Okay, then it's time to go over and install the barrel. And here we're specifically also checking our headspace. So as I mentioned here, I'm using the Short Action Customs modular barrel vise. This is the one that flips open on the top. I kind of like that feature. And I'm using 1.2 inch bushings. They have bushing sets that cover a wide variety of different barrel shank diameters. And curiously enough, drywall tape works really well. A couple wraps around the barrel, clamp it in the bushings, and it does a really good job from preventing spinning and preventing any kind of marring or scratching, importantly, and is not as messy as rosin powder. I tightened things down to 90 foot-pounds, and headspace came in exactly where I wanted to be. Usually you have a go gauge at 0, if you want to consider that the reference point, and then a no-go gauge at 6 thousandths beyond that. I'm using tape on the back of the go gauge, which is 2 thousandths. So I'm at go at 0 and no-go at 2, much tighter tolerances I use when I'm doing chambering jobs and building custom rifles. And I typically want a chamber that's on the tighter side, but within SAAMI specifications, so I know if I'm running factory ammo, that factory ammo is going to chamber. Once I had validated headspace, it was time to Cerakote the barreled action. Now this was the first full barreled action that I've Cerakoted. For the 224 Valkyrie Boyd stock upgrade, I did graphite gray on the barrel. I had taken it off, Cerakoted it, put it back on. That was step 1. Step 2 is this complete barreled action, and then step 3, if you watch my other 7 PRC build, for the BAT full custom with MDT ESS, I enhanced the process a little bit further, and we also did some really cool laser engravings. So you're going to want to check that one out as well. So paving the road for this work was going to the Cerakote Certified Applicator training in White City, Oregon. I learned from the best of the best. But we didn't do barreled actions there. We did AR-15s, we did Glock slides, we did a bunch of stuff. This was kind of a new domain. So I decided to do the barreled action assembled minus the scope rail. I had the brake installed because I didn't want to coat the threads. Again, I'm developing a process here. So I assembled things, I masked them, I sandblasted them with 100 grit aluminum oxide. I cleaned things up, applied the Cerakote, and again, I'm using 2 coats and very careful watching it get laid down. I actually used a test barrel section, checked my thickness. I want to be at 1/1000th of an inch total thickness. After the Cerakote is applied, it flashes for 15 minutes, goes into the oven for an hour at 300, then unmask and then assemble. So some notes. I did not coat the outside of the bolt body or the inside of the receiver body and where the raceways are, because H-Series Cerakote isn't intended for that. My thought is I'm going to use micro slick for that. That is a very specific specialty Cerakote product with low friction characteristics, and that's going to be kind of a future endeavor, probably a next endeavor actually, but it works great to just mask off the bolt body, mask off the inside of the receiver, and not coat it as well. So the thickness test on my short cut down barrel section that I just did as kind of a test spray came in at exactly 1/1000th of an inch on either side, so I had a total diameter increase of 2/1000ths of an inch. With the 2 coats, I did 3 coats on the graphite black, and I felt like maybe that put on a little bit too much. My engraving was filled in just a touch. This seemed to be perfect. And of course, it's going to depend on your technique and how, all of the parameters for your gun setup and how far away you're spraying. But I did everything like we did at the certified applicator training, and that worked really good. So in addition to this, I'm going to have a separate video on Cerakoting barreled actions. And so for further detail and for more information on the process, you're going to want to check out that as well. And then, of course, check out my other 7 PRC build as well. Okay, so for the stock work, I did pretty much what I did for the 224 Valkyrie Boyd's stock upgrade. I widened the barrel channel just a little bit because I've got a barrel that's wider than a factory Remington 700. I widened the recoil lug pocket very slightly and deepened it slightly. I think about 1/10 of an inch of depth and just a little bit of width. The recoil lug did fit into the recoil lug pocket, but it was almost bottoming out, and I want to leave a little bit of room for the epoxy bedding material behind the recoil lug and just give things a little bit more breathing room. I created the same exact kind of custom pillars as I did for the Boyd's 224 Valkyrie upgrade, except this time I didn't contour them. I left them flat on the top, and that worked good. I used a little bit of tape around the barrel to center it in the barrel channel and did the epoxy bedding. Epoxy bedding was the same way. One minor enhancement I'm looking to do on this process is to thicken my bedding material just a little bit, because I'm finding that after I use a heat gun to pop bubbles and get all the air out of it, it's a little thin and tends to just run down into the bottom a little bit. So that's something that I'm looking to enhance. I might just let it set up for a certain number of minutes and get a little bit more thick, and then do the bedding process at that point. So I've got a stress-free bedding job. Everything is fitting great with the stock. The Cerakote looks absolutely awesome. Totally happy with how things turned out on this guy. And here's a picture of the test target. I only had 2 boxes of ammo for breaking in 2 rifles. Not a whole lot to deal with. But the first 3 shots was the factory match, 180 grain factory match, which shot best out of both rifles. And the first 3 shots during the cleaning and break-in process went into .540 inches, which is .515 MOA. And for a Magnum, that is awesome. And for velocity, with the 22-inch barrel, we saw about 150 feet per second less than what we got with the 28-inch barrel on the BAT custom build with the MDT ESS. I wanted to show kind of both ends of the length spectrum here for a 7 PRC. And the 22 inches are really great, gives the rifle a really great form factor for running a suppressor, which is why I specifically wanted to do that. So the 175 ELDX Precision Hunter ammo saw 2,852 feet per second average, and the 180 grain ELDM factory match ammunition was at 2,845 feet per second, almost identical velocities and very similar bullet weights. So the 7 PRC can go from about 150 grains up to about 195 grains, and we're kind of in the middle there, so it'll be interesting to experiment with that a little bit. Haven't gotten to any load development, haven't shot any reloads in this rifle yet, and that's just kind of a next step. But in terms of a rifle I would take into elk country, this is an absolutely outstanding option, and I'm really happy both with the 7 PRC cartridge in general and also specifically with this rifle. So this was a huge learning curve, this build and the other build. Lots of new tools, the tailstock arrow, the pressure flush system. We're doing new things in the Cerakote booth using thread micrometers on the breech end and on the muzzle end, and really kind of refining the process and getting kind of more and more exacting with things and more efficient with the process, both of which are really important to me specifically. So that's the full custom Bergara Premier build. I think this is a great action to base a build off of. I'm really happy with the final product. And what I would like to know from you is, what do you think? What do you think about this Boyd's Agility stock, the Bergara Premier action, these Bartline barrel blanks, the Salmon River Solutions rail and Type Pro 3 ST brake, the Hunter mag, the Hunter DBM bottom metal. I mean, there's a lot of really cool stuff here. The Riton scope. This is just a great package. What do you think about 7mm PRC? What kind of rifle would you build or buy, and what would you shoot with it? Drop a comment. Let's discuss the tools, the components, the cartridge, and all of it. I'm really having fun with this, and I think you will too. That concludes this video, and that means it's time to wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, we're on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, where we've got unrestricted content, and Instagram. Make sure to follow us on all those channels. Ultimate Reloader also has a commercial solutions division serving law enforcement, the military, and the gun industry. We have some unique capabilities, including a comprehensive suite of recoil testing and evaluation capabilities, trigger profiling, and more. If you're interested in custom rifles like what we build here on the channel, or gunsmithing services, you're going to want to go to rifles.ultimatereloader.com and get on the wait list. If you're interested in becoming a professional gunsmith, check out the Sonoran Desert Institute. They've got a degree program, they've got a certificate program, and you can study from home. Learn more at sdi.edu. Thanks again for watching.